Hello everyone, welcome to the Unacademy platform, and today we are going to discuss the next sequence, that is the pathology revision course, right? So here I want to tell that today again I will be, it's a kind of mixed thing. So I will be having including majority of the good slides or good questions or good images, so that we can discuss here at one place. But some of the students, they had asked about the discussion about chapter wise discussion. So I felt like chapter wise discussion will not be a good idea if I am covering this in 1 hour, right? But still I can consider if majority of people are saying in that fashion. So I will be waiting for that poll also. So this is the again I will tell you, this is my Unacademy uh, Operation Neat PG 2021 batch we have started, and I will recommend you to join this because of all good faculties are there, and this is one of the very uh, it's one of the very important platform which will help you in your NEET PG preparation, PGI preparation, AIMS preparation. The kind of educator available here and the kind of programming we are having here is a very excellent, and you should join it. You can join me at my Telegram group also, and you can see this is my Unacademy profile. You can follow here so that you can have update about the upcoming free live lectures if you are interested in that thing. And this is the you can see if you want to join, you can use this code and you will be getting discount for that, right? And you can see the array of faculties are one of the excellent faculties you can see at Unacademy, right? And they will be helping you. And this is the schedule of the Unacademy. You can see what are the features of the Unacademy. You can see there is a test and discussion module which will be marathon. There will be a theoretical discussion, so it will be helping you a lot. Especially I'm telling you, if you are preparing for NEET PG 2021, it's the time to grab this opportunity. Don't leave it. No, we are going to discuss everything, Nidhi. We are going to discuss everything, and these are the schedule you can see, and you can check here the top educators, right? So, as I was telling you, I wanted to ask you people that what you want me to do, right? So, I'm just giving you two options. Either I should go random, like I am going from past one day. Today also I'm going to do that same thing, or you want me to go with the chapter wise. But remember, it is a 1 hour course. It's not the full course, right? So you will be getting only few points. So I'm just giving you a poll. Can you tell me what should be the thing which I should follow? I want to see the majority of people what they are saying, and then I will be planning according to that. Chapter wise, I will tell you, chapter wise it will be very less amount, so it will be not that sufficient. Yes, if I'm choosing different topics from different chapters, so what will happen? Every day you are touching all important topics. That is one important thing, right? Great. So I think random will be better thing. Please don't mind that, but I will tell you because in random thing you will be seeing regularly all the important things which you are coming. It's chapter wise, the same story will be going on, and you will be missing many of the important findings. Random, I can include some random topic also, and I can teach you, right? So that's great. So fine. So now we will start from the question number one. Look at the question. Remember, MCQ questions are always you have to see the language, you have to catch up the language, you have to very attentive, right? So this is the first question you can see, and you can tell me, right, what should be the right answer for this question. This is a little clever question. Now you can see in this examiner is asking about a patient is 71-year-old suffering from the lung cancer, and he's showing connective tissue atrophy, sequestering organelle and cytosol in a vacuole, which is then fusing with the lysosome. So this is very typical feature, right? This is very typical feature of the one phenomena which is given here. So can you tell me what will be that phenomenon? Right. So examiner is asking which of the following process is most likely occurring in this normal cell, but is inhibited in the cancer cell. Normal cell is happening, but cancer cell it is not happening. Remember, just the catch point I have told you, the organelle, sequestering organelle and cytosol in a vacuole, which then fuses with the lysosome, right? So which then fuses with the lysosome. So yes, very good. Majority of you have given me the right answer, right? So majority of the you have given me the right answer. Answer is the autophagy, right? So it is autophagy. Answer is autophagy. The C is right answer. Here I want to tell you a few important points about the autophagy. Why it is autophagy? Because in the beginning itself, what question is telling that this is happening inside the lysosome, right? So remember, this lysosomes are the most important organelle for autophagy, right? So that is the question in NEET PG exam also, right? Which organelle you will see autophagy, and autophagy means self-eating, right? Autophagy means self-eating. Right. Thank you, Nidhi. Thank you so much. So autophagy means self-eating, means that organelle is this lysosomal organelle is now catching up the protein and they are doing the self-eating, means they are degrading them. So in the one sense, you can say that this autophagy is a mechanism for atrophy also. It is a mechanism of atrophy also. So that is also one important MCQ which examiner had asked, right? Atrophy is associated with autophagy. That was the question in NEET PG 2016, right? So autophagy, now you can see that autophagy is for atrophy. What are the other things associated with autophagy, right? What are the other things associated with autophagy? So here I will tell you autophagy is associated with, as one thing is written here, atrophy, right? Second thing you can see, autophagy is also associated with inflammation or infections. Inflammation or infection, and this can be a very good future question in exam. Which infection is associated with autophagy and which gene is responsible for that thing, right? So these are the two questions from the Robbins. It is given in Robbins only, right? There is a gene called ATGS5. ATGS ATGS5 gene. ATGS5 gene, when they are normally present, they control macrophage function, right? They control macrophage function. And when there is a mutation, when there is a mutation in ATGS, or you can say deletion or mutation in ATGS5, then macrophage function will be lost. And this patient will be having, or this person will be having, increased risk for TB infection. So increased risk of TB infection because of autophagy associated gene, that is called as ATGS5, right? So now you understood autophagy is associated with atrophy, autophagy is associated with infection. And here the third thing which is in this question, autophagy will be dysregulated. Try to understand, autophagy will be dysregulated. Mr. Black, if you're asking me Unacademy and prep letter, I think you ask better to the Unacademy owner. I don't have any idea about that thing, right? So that should not be asked here. I'm telling you, this question should not be asked here. I'm not the person to ask all those questions, right? You can ask me pathology only, right? So infection, and then you can see when autophagy is dysregulated. That is the important thing. When autophagy is dysregulated, that will be seen in cancer cells, right? So that was the question in this, right? So in cancer cell you will be seeing dysregulated autophagy, means autophagy is not functioning properly. Otherwise autophagy will remove the cell through the atrophy, all right? But here it is dysregulated. That was the older USMLE question also, right? Dysregulated autophagy is associated with carcinomas, right? So that is the important point, right? So now coming back to this question, you can see that in aging what will happen, right? What will happen in aging? Aging will be having no association with this lysosome, right? Aging, what will be there? So just I'm telling you a few important points, right? In aging you will be seeing there will be a telomere shortening. Telomere shortening, right? And aging, who will be affected, means which organelle will be affected, right? So that time you have to remember, aging is because of the mitochondria involvement. Mitochondria will be under oxidative stress. Mitochondria will be under oxidative stress, and this free radical will be released. Free radical induced damage will be the reason for aging. So that is the most widely accepted hypothesis, right? So what I have written you here is the most widely accepted hypothesis. So aging is associated with mitochondria. Aging is associated with mitochondria, which will be having oxidative stress. Free radical will be produced and they will be causing damage, and all these damage will be resulting in telomere shortening, DNA damage, organelle damage, right? So this is important to understand. Aging is associated with mitochondria, not with the lysosome, right? Apoptosis, again you know that apoptosis is also a mitochondrial process. So mitochondria will be associated with apoptosis. Metaplasia is a different thing. It's a precursor of tumor. It's a precursor of tumor, where one cell is getting transformed into another type of mature cell. One cell type is getting transformed into another type of mature cell, that is called as metaplasia, right? So this is metaplasia. One cell is getting transformed into another type of cell. Remember, and this cell is mature cell. One mature cell is getting replaced by another type of mature cell. It is called as metaplasia, right? And what is the mechanism of metaplasia? That was the again important MCQ. If the examiner is asking, see, this is the definition of the metaplasia, right? When examiner is asking you about the mechanism of metaplasia, so it will be stem cell reprogramming. Stem cell reprogramming. So stem cell reprogramming is the basic mechanism. It is not the adult cell, it is not the mature cell, it is the stem cell which will be having reprogramming, and that will be leading, right? So whenever examiner is giving you a history of the cancer and he is telling there is a atrophy or there is a damage of the tissue, right? This picture what I have shown you here, this is a picture of cancer cachexia. Remember what I have shown you here, this is the picture of cancer cachexia. Try to understand what is cancer cachexia. Can you tell me what is cancer cachexia? Cancer cachexia is loss of what? Can you tell me in the comment box? Cancer cachexia is loss of muscle, loss of fat, or both? Can you tell me in the comment box? Loss of muscle, loss of fat, or both? Very nice. So Ayushi, Rajesh, you are telling right answer. Monica, Suhashini, all you are yes, very good. It's a great response. Loss of muscle and fat both will be called as cancer cachexia, right? So now we are seeing in this case is also cancer cachexia, and who is the stimulator of cancer cachexia? Which cytokine? You remember yesterday also we have discussed, that is the tumor necrosis factor alpha. So that is the important cytokine for cancer cachexia, right? So now this question is up. So this is the autophagy. Main organelle for autophagy is lysosome, right? Autophagy means self-eating. They will be eating their own protein by degrading through the lysosomal vacuoles, and that is how they will be doing atrophy, and that is how they can induce inflammation, and it will be deranged in case of the cancer, right? So now we will see the next question. This question is, be careful, this question is not that easy question. Look at the diagram. Probably I think first time you might be seeing this kind of picture also. Histopathology of acute kidney damage is shown below. Which of the following is true about this, what we are seeing here? So answer is, what about the what we are seeing here? You can give me the answer. That's an easy question. Yes, you may find out. I'm not saying it's a tough question, but you have to be a little bit patient for this question. You have to look for the 5 areas of the slide, center of the slide, and then you analyze, and then you find out, and then you can say that, yes, this is the injury. Don't go by one common law that it is this one, right? Very nice. So I'm just seeing that you people are going great. Right. So what kind of injury? And if you can, yes, many of you are telling the name also. I'm very happy with that thing. Yes, very good. And this is the great answer by you, all of you, right? So answer is reversible injury. So this is a case of reversible injury, right? So histopathology of acute kidney damage is shown here. Like now you can see, as I said, whenever slide is given in your exam, you have to look for the 5 areas. Can you see this in this slide? You are looking at the 5 areas: number one, number two, number three, number four, and the fifth area is the central part. Then you observe and compare. Rule of observation, rule of comparison. So you can observe cells here also, and you can observe some cells here also. These are all tubular cells. These are all renal tubules, right? So what I'm showing you here, these are the renal tubule. So all these are renal tubules only. All these are renal tubules only. But when you are seeing these renal tubule, I'm just marking this one with the blue color. This renal tubule cells, right? You can see these are renal tubule cells. How is the renal tubule cell? These are the bigger one, right? And you can see how is the cytoplasm. Cytoplasm should be yes, I will be updating, Joel. I will be updating. Yesterday I told you about ferroptosis, right? So whatever updates are present in the Robbins, I will be bringing those things here also, right? So we can see here there is a size. If you compare the size of this cell to this cell, right, now you can see that there is a eosinophilic cytoplasm, but here it is little bit foamy type. Why it is foamy? Because there is a water entry during reversible injury. So this is the hydropic change, because there is a water entry. So this is the hydropic change. Hydropic change is also called as cloudy swelling, right? This is also called as cloudy swelling. right? So hydropic change or cloudy swelling, these are the features of the reversible injury, right? So these are the features of the reversible injury, right? So this answer is reversible injury. That is why I said, and what you are observing here is the hydropic change. There is a cloudy swelling, right? Here I will just brief you some more important point about this. What happens during the cell injury or during the reversible injury? Just I will brief you about reversible injury. What happens, right? Whenever there is a you will see a reversible injury. So you all know that what is the most common cause of any cell injury? Most common cause of any cell injury is the hypoxia, right? Because of hypoxia there is a decreased oxidative phosphorylation, right? There is a decreased oxidative phosphorylation, and because of decreased oxidative phosphorylation ATP production will be reduced, right? And you have to remember that ATP production will be reduced to 5 to 10% of the normal. 5 to 10% of the normal to induce any kind of cell injury, right? That can be also a future question. And I have seen some of the US Assembly exam, they had given this in the language also. ATP has been reduced 5%, right? So that time you have to understand, when examiner is saying ATP has been reduced to 5%, it means you have to think about cell injury has been started, right? So because of this ATP reduction, what will happen? Suppose I am showing you this is the cell, and this side I am showing you the normal cell, and this side I will be showing you injured one. So normally this ATP, remember normally this ATP controls sodium and potassium. Sodium will be going outside and potassium will be moving inside. So, and this is controlled by ATP pump, right? But in case of injury, so actually we are talking about reversible injury. So in case of reversible injury, what I am going to tell that, because ATP has been reduced, so sodium will come inside, sodium will come inside and potassium will move outside. Along with the sodium, there will be entry of the water, and this water entry is the reason for the swelling of the cell. So that is why there is a cellular swelling. And remember, this cell swelling is the first change in any kind of cell injury. So remember, this is the first sign. First sign of cell injury is the cellular swelling, right? So first sign of cell injury is the cell swelling. Why there is a swelling? Because of water entry. So that is why this change is also called as cloudy swelling or hydropic change. Cloudy swelling or hydropic change, right? So now you understood. So that is why when you are seeing the cell, can you see this? That is why when you are seeing the cell in hydropic change, because water has entered, so that is why you can see cytoplasm is little bit looking foamy or clear because of the water entry, and this change is called as cloudy swelling. That is again a very important MCQ when examiner will be asking you. There is no hypotonic and hypertonic concept is applicable here, right? It is the obviously when sodium is coming, then obviously the concentration will be more inside, right? So there is no discussion of hypertonic and hypotonicity in this case is relevant, right? So it's not relevant. So now you can see that hydropic change, what is there? Cloudy change, what is there? Water entry is there, and you can see it is in acute lung injury, right? So now you can see this question answer is reversible injury. If it would have been irreversible injury, then what you would have seen? Granular material is not the mitochondria. We cannot say that it is the mitochondria simply by seeing this. Granularity is because of the foamy nature. Cytoplasm would have been broken down, and that is why they have been diluted and they are looking like that. This granularity is not the oncocytic change. Nidhi, this granularity is not the oncocytic change where you will see the mitochondria, right? Fine. And in irreversible damage, so this is reversible injury where you are seeing the cellular swelling or hydropic change. In case of irreversible injury, what you will see? In case of irreversible injury, you will not be seeing the nucleus. Nucleus will be absent, right? Nucleus will be absent, or they will be showing the changes. What are those changes? Karyorrhexis, karyorrhexis, pycnosis, and karyolysis, right? So these are the changes you will see in the nuclei when you are seeing a histopathology of the irreversible damage. And the second important thing is you will not find the cellular architecture will be preserved like this, right? Liquefactive necrosis. Why not? It is liquefactive necrosis. You can see cellular architecture is preserved here, right? So you can see cellular architecture is preserved here. In liquefactive necrosis, there will be no tissue architecture will be seen. So no tissue architecture will be visible because they all have been liquefied by the enzymes, right? So you will not find this in this condition, right? Metaplasia is a different thing. As I have told you already, there will be change of one epithelium to the another epithelium. Yes, change the order. Joel, you are asking, is there any order of the nuclear changes in irreversible? Yes, there is a nuclear order change which I have written. Change in irreversible injury. Change in irreversible injury. First, you will see pycnosis, then you will see karyorexis, and then you will see karyolysis. So this is the order you will be finding. This is the order you will be finding. Yeah, cell membrane damage is not seen in reversible injury. Remember, Dr. Nishu, you are asking that. Cell membrane damage. So here I want to tell you important thing here. When we are talking about reversible and irreversible damage, right? So the cell membrane damage is seen in irreversible injury. Cell membrane damage is seen in irreversible injury. Reversible injury you will see in the organelle membrane damage. So I will say that you will find organelle membrane damage. Cell membrane damage is a demarcating feature and more characteristic of irreversible injury. So this is the differentiating feature also, you can say that, right? You can say that it is a differentiating feature between the reversible and irreversible injury. Motu Patlu is behind me. Thank you. So now you can see this is the another good question. This question had been asked in previous year AIMS exam also, but I am just twisting that question. This phenomena is associated with which of the following condition, right? So now you can see this phenomena is seen in which of the following conditions. So what should be the answer for this question? It's a simple question, easy one. You can see if you observe, always remember, observe the 5 areas, all 4 corners, center, then you compare and then you observe something unusual. If you are seeing anything, yes, Himanshu, you are correct, you are seeing something. Yes, that's great approach, that's a great approach. Yes, very good SS, you are also telling the right answer. So yes, I'm very happy that majority of you have said the right answer only, and that's great answer. That's great answer. That's great, right? So this phenomena which you are seeing here, you can see in this, I will show you in this another picture. What you are observing, there is a bigger cell. Let me explain you. There is a bigger cell, right? And this bigger cell is having nucleus like this. So this is the megakaryocyte. So remember what I'm showing you here, it is a megakaryocyte, right? This is the megakaryocyte. Now in this bigger cell, if you notice, there is a another cell which is the smaller one, a smaller one. And in this smaller one, you can see the nucleus also. This is the neutrophil, right? So what I'm showing you here, megakaryocyte, neutrophil has, just I wanted to show you by this symbolic manner. This is the megakaryocyte. This is the megakaryocyte. Neutrophil will enter inside this megakaryocyte, and then they will come out also from the megakaryocyte. So neutrophil here, here, and here, they will be unaltered. There is no change, no change in morphology, in physiology, right? So nothing is changed. So as they have gone inside, they came outside, right? So this process is called as imperipolysis, right? So that is the imperipolysis. So what I'm showing you, this process is called as imperipolysis, right? Imperipolysis. So what is imperipolysis? Active penetration of the cell, right? So remember what is this? This is the active penetration of cells within another cell, right? Within another cell, and then coming out of the cell intact, right? So I'm just writing intact. Intact means there is no change in morphology and physiology, right? So that is the definition of imperipolysis. They will be actively penetrating into the another cell without getting damage, and they will be coming out of the cell. That is how we differentiate it from the phagocytosis. In phagocytosis, it will be killed. Phagocytosis, when this neutrophil or any other cell is coming inside the another cell, after that they will not leave, they will be killed in that cell by the lysosome, right? That is the difference. There is no destruction here, right? So what is imperipolysis significance? Significance of emperipolysis is not much, only to identify that there is a emperipolysis going on and certain disorders. It is not diagnostic, right? In certain disorders, you will be seeing emperipolysis is present. So that is the significance. So who are those disorders where we are using emperipolysis as a landmark thing, right? So you can see that it is also present in autoimmune hepatitis. It will be also seen in Rosé-Dorfman syndrome, and this picture is of myelodysplastic syndrome. Remember, this is the myelodysplastic syndrome, right? Significance is not there. There is no significance of the emperipolysis. It is just a finding. It is just a finding which will give us clue. For example, when you are seeing autoimmune hepatitis, right? So you will be seeing rosette formation plus emperipolysis, right? So that is why when you are seeing the liver rosette formation plus emperipolysis, then you can think about autoimmune hepatitis. That is the significance. Rosé-Dorfman syndrome is a histiocytic disorder where histiocytes will be engulfing them, right? So, Rosé-Dorfman syndrome is a histiocytosis disorder. Remember, it is a histiocytosis disorder, right? Histiocytosis disorder, that's all, right? And it is a great mimicker of the lymphoma. So, when we will be, as a pathologist, when we are seeing this Rosé-Dorfman syndrome, we will be always having a confusion for the lymphoma. That is why it is important. That is why it is important. This question was not there yesterday. I think emperipolysis was not there, Chintu. Right. Fine. So now it's clear. Now look at this question. So it will be, I will be going along with that one. Someday I will be, like tomorrow, I am going to use many immunology question. Right. Tomorrow I'll be using many immunology questions. So I will be shuffling this. Don't worry. So there are a lot of time in this month. I think whole month I am taking some individual lecture, free lecture like this for 1 hour, and I will be including. Don't worry about that thing. I will be including so many topics here. Right. So in this question, can you tell me what should be the right answer? It's a very simple question. Sorry. Just cancel this. Okay. By mistake, the I am wrong answer has been clicked off. Can you tell me what is the granuloma here? I'll just tell you. Now you give me the poll. What is this granuloma? Identify this special granuloma. Can you tell me? Yes, Anubhuti, clinical features of the Rosé-Dorfman syndrome will be similar to the lymphoma. Similar to the lymphoma, we have to go for immunophenotyping and molecular cytogenetics to differentiate these two things. That is why we have a confusion. They will be also having lymph node enlargement. They will be also having the similar body loss, loss of appetite, body weight loss, loss of appetite. All these things will be seen. Right. Look at this granuloma. Observe 5 areas. Compare and look. Something is present or something is missing here. That should be our target, right? So great answer. Majority of you have given me the right answer, but some of students are telling something else. So I think you should understand what I am showing you here. It's a kind of granuloma, right? Granulomatous inflammation. And what is the granulomatous inflammation? It's not keratin pearl. See, just wait 1 minute. Let me explain you, because many of the students, they don't know how to define granuloma. Just I'm giving you a brief description of the granuloma. When you see the granuloma, how to identify granuloma? You can identify granuloma only by knowing the definition. What is the granuloma definition? You will see epithelioid cells in the center. Remember what I'm showing you? These are, when you are seeing a flat elongated cell, these are epithelioid cells. So what is this? These are epithelioid cell. So flat elongated cells are called as epithelioid cells. So you will be seeing epithelioid cells at one place, right? And then it will be they will be having color of lymphocytic infiltrate. So this is color of lymphocytic infiltrate. So lymphocytic infiltrate, they are forming color. So such a abundant inflammation will be there that they will be forming a color of lymphocytic infiltrate, right? Then epithelioid cells will be having fusion. You remember yesterday I have shown you some giant cell. So after fusion, you will be seeing two characteristic presentation of the nuclei. One is haphazard and one is horseshoe shape. So what you are seeing here is called Langhans giant cell, and what you are seeing here is called as foreign body giant cell, as we have seen yesterday also, right? So what I'm showing you, this is the ideal definition of the granuloma. Elongated cells are epithelioid cells surrounded by a color of lymphocytic infiltrate, accompanied by the two Jan cells which are formed by fusion of epithelioid cell. Remember, sometime examiner asked this question. Jan cell origin is fusion of epithelioid cell, right? So they are derived from the epithelioid cell, except for the tumor Jan cell. Except for the tumor Jan cells are derived from the tumor cell. But otherwise, in general speaking, granulomatous inflammation, Jan cells are derived from the epithelioid cell, right? So now we are seeing there is a lymphocytic infiltrate. So color of lymphocytic infiltrate should be there. Now look at this picture. Now look at this picture which is in this question, right? If you look at the 5 areas, as I said, look for the 5 areas: 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Right now you can see there is a one area. This is one area. You can notice this is one area. This is one area. So what are all these areas? Can you see this? What is this present in this? Can you notice this? What is this? Can you notice what is this? What is this? What I am marking? Can you see this? What is this? Foreign body Jan cell. This is the foreign body Jan cell. And this one is the Langhans Jan cell. Langhans Jan cell. Right. So what is missing here? Can you see the color of lymphocytic infiltrate here at this point? No. So there is no color of lymphocytic infiltrates, right? So remember, when you find no color of lymphocytic infiltrate, either no color of lymphocytic infiltrate, or you will be having scanty lymphocytic infiltrate. Scanty lymphocytic infiltrate. So this is a feature of naked granuloma. Remember, this is a feature of naked granuloma. So when you do not find any color of lymphocytic infiltrate, so remember that is the feature of naked granuloma, which is seen in sarcoidosis. Right. So now you understood what should be the answer. Sarcoidosis should be the answer. So we are seeing, see, I will just point out something which is very, very important here to understand. Can you see these are some of the elongated cell? These elongated cells are epithelioid cells also. Right, so these are epithelioid cells also. So you can see epithelioid cell is present, foreign body Jan cell is present, Langhans Jan cell is present, but only thing which is missing is the color of lymphocytic infiltrate, which is missing. Right, so always remember, this will be, there is no caseous necrosis here. You cannot see caseous necrosis here. There is no caseous necrosis in this picture. Shipra, there is no caseous necrosis here. Right, so it's a sarcoidosis granuloma. So answer is sarcoidosis granuloma. This is the right answer. What is the fibrin ring granuloma, right? So that is again a very important thing. What is the fibrin ring granuloma? I will show you here. This is called fibrin ring granuloma. This is called fibrin ring granuloma, right? So this is fibrin ring granuloma. What is the characteristic of fibrin ring granuloma? And this is also called, can you see this? There is a donut also. So that is why it is also called as donut granuloma. This is also called as donut granuloma, right? So fibrin ring granuloma is seen in which condition? Examiner had asked this question in AIIMS exam, right? So fibrin ring granuloma is seen in, yes, very good. It's seen in, Arun is telling, Q fever, right? Q fever, which is called by Coxiella burnetii, and it is also seen in Hodgkin's lymphoma. It can be also seen in infectious mononucleosis, right? So remember these three names may be a future question in exam, right? So Q fever is Hodgkin's lymphoma. They are most characteristically seen in the Q fever. If examiner is asking to choose one answer, remember they are most characteristically associated with the Q fever, Coxiella burnetii, right? Why it is a fibrin ring granuloma? Can you see this? If I will show you, there is a central area which is clear. Central area is clear because it is consisting of lipid. Right, lipid is not catching up the stain. That is why central area is clear. And then you can see there is a wall. There is a wall, and this wall is having so many elongated cells and inflammatory cells. So many elongated cells and inflammatory cells, right? So you can see elongated cells, and you can see small lymphocytic infiltrates out there, right? So what I'm showing you, elongated cells are epithelioid cells. These are epithelioid cells. And what is this? This is the lymphocytic infiltrate, right? Now you can see in this diagram, right? So all these are epithelioid cells. So what I'm marking with the red color is epithelioid cell, right? So red color, I'm marking one. They are all epithelioid cell, right? Now I'm going to use green color. All these small cells, round nucleus. Can you see? These are all round nucleus. green color, round, these are all mononuclear lymphocytic infiltrate. So this is the second lymphocytic infiltrate, right? So here you are not seeing that characteristic giant cell, just you are seeing there is a central vacuole which is made up of central clear space which is made up of lipid, surrounded by a, you can see there is a surrounded by color of mixture of the epithelioid cell and lymphocytic infiltrate. That is the beautiful description of the fibrin ring granuloma. Why it is called as fibrin ring? Can you see this? This is a ring, right? This is the ring. You can see this is the ring, and this ring is having pink fibrinous material. So this is the pink fibrinous material, pink fibrinous material, and that is why it is called as fibrin ring granuloma, right? So it is fibrin ring granuloma where you will see Q fever, Hodgkin's, and infectious mononucleosis, most commonly associated with Q fever caused by Coxiella burnetii, right? Now look at this another one, that stellate granuloma. This was the question which had been asked so many times in NEET PG exam, right? In this you can observe that there is a star-shaped necrotic area. See, all these are having no nuclei, and whatever you are seeing here, remember this this dark color structure. Yes, this one. Can you see this dark color structure is all these are the necrotic debris or necrotic debris of the nuclei. Necrotic debris of the nuclei, which we call in pathology, we will be calling them as a nuclear dusting, right? And when you see this, it means it is suggestive of necrosis, right? So what we are seeing, it is necrosis. What kind of necrosis? You can see that entire area is necrotic only, right? So entire area is necrotic, looking like a star shape. So this is the stellate granuloma, star shape. That is why it is called as stellate granuloma. Who is the reason for star-shaped necrosis? So it is due to neutrophilic infiltrate. Remember, so that is why sometimes stellate granuloma is also called as neutrophilic granuloma, right? So it is also called as neutrophilic granuloma. So what I will say that stellate granuloma is seen in cat scratch disease. That is the question which examiner had asked multiple times in exam. Cat scratch disease, and for future exam you can remember lymphogranuloma venereum. So cat scratch disease and lymphogranuloma venereum, these are the two important conditions where you will be finding stellate granuloma. Remember, stellate granuloma is a kind of uncharacteristic. What is uncharacteristic? See, granuloma, you will see lymphocytic infiltrate. But what is uncharacteristic here? You are going to see the neutrophilic infiltrate. That is the uncharacteristic. It's an acute inflammation, right? Acute inflammatory cells you are seeing in this stellate granuloma. So that is why it is uncharacteristic, and examiner is asking this question, right? This one is again a important MCQ. What I'm showing you, this is the Fields stain. This is the Fields stain. We use it for malaria diagnosis, right? So this is the actually brain histopathology, right? Fields stain on brain histopathology, and this patient is suffering from the cerebral malaria, right? This patient is suffering from the cerebral malaria. Sarcoid granuloma, they can have fibrin, because fibrin is not very specific thing, right? Fibrin become specific in donut granuloma because they are giving a ring-like structure. Fibrin can be present in any inflammation. Kanaya, try to understand. Fibrin can be present in any inflammation because inflammation will damage the endothelium. Endothelium will release the procoagulant. Procoagulant will start coagulation pathway, and in the end, fibrin will be formed. That can be seen in any inflammation. But donut granuloma, that fibrin is the reason for the characteristic shape like a donut, right? That ring has been formed because of the fibrin. That is why I have mentioned that particular name, right? So what I'm showing you here, cerebral malaria is caused by Plasmodium falciparum. Plasmodium falciparum. And here we can see this is the brain blood vessel. Can you see this? Why it is not looking green, red color? Because it's a Fields stain. It's a special stain for this one. So what I'm showing you, this is the blood vessel of the brain, and within this blood vessel of the brain, you can observe these are all rings of the Plasmodium falciparum, right? So all these are rings of the Plasmodium falciparum. So whatever I have shown you, all these are a special type of granuloma. Why I am calling them a special type of granuloma? Because they are not like a usual granuloma where you will be seeing characteristic epithelioid cell, giant cell, lymphocytic infiltrate. You cannot see here. You cannot see any epithelioid cell here. You cannot see that giant cell here. Just you will see one thing, two things. That is the blood vessel, and blood vessel is full of rings of the Plasmodium falciparum, right? So this is the Dirk's granuloma, right? So this is the Dirk's granuloma. So Dirk's granuloma will be seen in cerebral malaria caused by Plasmodium falciparum. Jashwit, I will explain that malaria species discussion I will keep in my future lecture. Definitely, I will keep in my future lecture so that you can identify. But for time being, I will just tell you, when you are seeing the Plasmodium falciparum, just you have asked, that's what I'm doing, or Plasmodium vivax, right? So when you are seeing falciparum, you will be having very thin ring inside the RBC. There will be a very thin ring, and they will be having only one chromatin. But here you can see multiple nuclear chromatin will be there, and multiple rings can be affecting the vivax like this. So that is the one thing you have to understand, right? In Plasmodium falciparum, there will be only one ring which will be per RBC, one ring per RBC. But vivax, there will be multiple rings per RBC, and rings will be thicker in case of vivax. Any cell that can be called characteristic of any granuloma. Ajish, there is no cell which can be called as characteristic. Yes, but we can say that which is the most important cell in formation of the granuloma. It is macrophage, which is most important. It is macrophage which is most important in granuloma formation, right? So now you understood. These are the important point. Now come to this question. This is a clinical type of question. This is how clinical scenario will be given in your exam. Taunton and Warthin faculty giant cell, under discussion I will be keeping. Bipin, I will be definitely keeping them in the question. I have kept them for the future MCQs. Means the next discussion I will be keeping all these things. All these things will be coming. Right. So can you tell me answer for this question? What should be the right answer? Most common defect in this patient. Can you tell me in the comment box what is the diagnosis here? Can you tell me in the comment box what is the diagnosis for this question? Characteristic diagram, characteristic presentation I have shown you here. Yes, Gayatri, yes, is Prashant, user, Upasna. You are all telling the right answer, means you are telling the correct diagnosis. What I'm showing you in this picture is a typical feature of one of the connective tissue disorder, which is because of the collagen, that is called as Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Yes, very good. So majority of you have given me the right answer, and I'm happy for that thing. So here, this is the characteristic picture of a syndrome called as Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So remember, what is this? Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, right? So this is the Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. In short, we write EDS, right? There are several types. It's a heterogeneous disorder. Try to understand what I'm saying. It's a heterogeneous disorder because they will be having multiple things, multiple inheritance, multiple types, multiple collagen, right? So it's a kind of heterogeneous disorder, and there are various types. Out of several subtypes, most common subtype, which was the NEET question also, it is the type 3 Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Type 3 Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is most common. Easy to remember. When examiner asks what is the most common collagen, which had been asked in this question, most common collagen is also type 3. So you can remember both things together like this, right? So most common subtype of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is type 3, right? Most common type of the collagen affected is also type 3. For this question, now you understood, answer is collagen type 3 is most commonly affected, not collagen 1. It's a collagen type 3 which is most commonly affected in the Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. All collagen can be affected. See what I'm saying? Most common type of collagen, they will be having multiple collagen defect, but most common is this one, right? What is the characteristic feature you are seeing in this clinical scenario which I have given you in this clinical picture? Can you see this? What is this number 1 showing? Can you notice this? How is the joint? We cannot do like this. So it is called as hyperflexibility of the joint. Hyperflexibility of the joint. Hyperflexibility of the joint you can see in Marfan syndrome also, right? So joint hyperflexibility or hyperextensibility you can see in the Marfan syndrome also, and here also. But what is the demarcating feature? Can you notice this picture and this picture? We cannot pull skin like this. So there is a hyper flexibility of skin also, right? So hyperflexibility of skin and joint makes the diagnosis clearer, and now we can understand it's a Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, right? So it's a Ehlers-Danlos syndrome because of the hyper flexibility of the joint plus skin. Because of the hyperflexibility of the skin, right? So you can see how he is stretching them like a rubber, and that is why it is also called as rubber man syndrome. So it is also called as rubber man syndrome. So rubber man syndrome is the name given to the Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, right? And what about this one? Can you notice what is this? This marked area which I'm showing you. This marked area is very thin scar, right? It's a very thin scar, and it is described as a cigarette paper like thin scar. Cigarette paper like thin scar, right? So cigarette paper like thin scar when you are seeing because of the collagen defect, right? So here because of the collagen 1 defect, so you can say that this is due to collagen 1 defect, right? So due to collagen 1 defect, because collagen 1 is associated with scar formation, right? So collagen 1 will be defective, that is why scar is very thin, right? So now cigarette paper like, because there is no collagen, so there will be no scarring. Black, there is no scarring because collagen will be defective. Scarring means there will be thick collagen which will be giving thickness, which will be giving tensile strength, which is not due to the defect in the collagen type 1. So because of that you can see all these findings. So cigarette paper like thin scarring, rubber like skin stretching, and then hyperflexibility of the joint. So all these fits into the Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Ehlers-Danlos syndrome will be having they will be having many other Mona, I have told you hypermobile joints can be seen in Marfan syndrome also, right? It can be seen in Marfan syndrome also, but Marfan syndrome will not be having hyperflexibility of the skin, right? So Ehlers-Danlos syndrome will be having all kind of inheritance pattern. Remember, all kind of Ehlers inheritance pattern, but the most common will be autosomal dominant, right? So that is also one important MCQ which examiner had asked earlier. Type 4 Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, Shankar is asking. Type 4 Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is the vascular type of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Shankar, type 4 is vascular type of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Why it is called as vascular? Because here you will see a spontaneous rupture of blood vessel, right? A spontaneous rupture of blood vessel will be seen in the vascular type, and this vascular type is the having worse prognosis. That is also all India question, right? Worse prognosis. Why they are having worse prognosis? Because of spontaneous rupture of the blood vessel, they will be having hypovolemic shock and sudden death. The spontaneous rupture of the blood vessel and hypovolemic shock will be the reason for sudden death, right? So now you understood this is the about Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So answer should be type 3 collagen. Most common defect in this patient will be type 3 collagen. All collagen will be defective. Remember, all collagen will be defected, but the most common type collagen is type 3 collagen, not type 4. It is not type 4. Rajesh, it is not type 4. It is type 3 collagen which will be most commonly affected in the Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Right. Now coming to this question, as somebody had asked yesterday, and I said that next day I will be including this question. So now I have included this question. A patient of Down syndrome, 41-year-old age, slowly progressive dementia. Which of the following lesions are likely to be present in the histopathology of the brain? So can you tell me what should be the right answer for this question? Down syndrome, and we are seeing Down syndrome baby. He is a 41-year-old. Yes, very good. It's a Alzheimer disease, right? So if Down syndrome, baby, so that question is very simple, right? This question is not tough, right? It's a very simple question and anybody can solve. This is the Down syndrome baby, and look at the age group when they survive beyond 41 years of age, right? So they will be definitely having the one disorder which is causing Alzheimer, which is causing dementia, that is the Alzheimer disease. So which of the following lesion will be present in the histopathology of the brain? So we all know that Alzheimer disease, what will be the histopathology? Neurofibrillary tangles will be present, right? Neurofibrillary tangle will be present. And remember, neurofibrillary tangle is the best marker for dementia correlation. That was the NIMHANS question also. Best marker for dementia correlation is neurofibrillary tangle, right? Now I am going to tell you about this correlation. Why Down syndrome patient, when they survive beyond 41 year of age, they will be having this Alzheimer disease, right? So I'm going to explain that thing, why it will happen. Suppose I'm talking about Down syndrome, right? And the age of this Down syndrome baby is 41 year. Second hand, I am going to show you the Alzheimer disease. Alzheimer disease. Why this is common? Why this is associated, not common? Why this is associated with Down syndrome? Right? If you look at the etiology, if you look at the etiology and pathogenesis of the Down syndrome, what is Down syndrome? Trisomy of chromosome number 21, right? So it is chromosome number 21 is there. Alzheimer disease is also associated with chromosome number 21, where you are seeing a protein called as amyloid precursor protein, right? So APP protein encoding genes are present, right? Amyloid precursor protein are present here, right? So amyloid precursor genes are there, which will be coding for the protein, right? Now this Down syndrome baby, when they survive beyond 40 years, what will happen? Now look at the Down syndrome. They have two normal chromosomes, so I'm making in red color, right? Now they are having extra chromosome, that is called as trisomy, right? So now we are having extra chromosome. What I'm showing you, extra chromosome. This extra chromosome will be having extra gene, right? Extra gene, which gene? APP gene. So this extra gene will be forming extra protein, extra protein. So that is the sequelae: extra chromosome, extra gene, extra APP protein, and this extra APP protein will be misfolded. So this will be having misfolding of the protein, right? So this extra protein will be forming A beta amyloid, and this A beta amyloid will be having misfolding of the protein. So that is also one important MCQ. Misfolding of the protein is the pathogenesis of the Alzheimer disease. Pathogenesis of Alzheimer disease is because of misfolding of the protein. So because of the misfolding of the protein, now this misfolded protein will be not removed, and they will be causing damage of the synaptic neuron. They will be causing damage of the synaptic neuron. Which area? Synaptic neuron of which area? Nucleus basalis of Meyer-Net. Nucleus basalis of Meyer-Net. Nucleus basalis of Meyer-Net, what is the feature? They are rich in acetylcholine. Acetylcholine neurotransmitter is rich here, right? But because of the damage, now you will see there is a decrease in acetylcholine neurotransmitter, and because of this only you are going to see the dementia and mental retardation in this patient, right? So now you understood. So this is how you have to understand these important points. Down syndrome correlation to the Alzheimer disease is the chromosome number 21, where APP gene is present. They will be continuously forming the APP protein, and especially when they are beyond 41-year-old age, there will be more protein. There will be more proteins which will not be removed, and they will be undergoing misfolding, and this misfolding will be causing damage of the nucleus basalis of the Meyer-Net, and that will be the reason for the acetylcholine neurotransmitter reduction and dementia and mental retardation, right? So in this Down syndrome baby, when you are seeing the brain autopsy, there will be tau protein. Tau protein will be having hyperphosphorylation, and this hyperphosphorylation will be forming neurofibrillary tangle. So that is the question. Neurofibrillary tangle will be seen in this Alzheimer disease, right? So now you understood what is the correlation between Alzheimer and Down syndrome. It's a purely chromosome number 21, right? So now you can see this question answer will be the neurofibrillary tangle, and neurofibrillary tangle is hyperphosphorylation of the tau protein, where you will see Negri bodies. Just a few important points. Negri bodies, where you will see Negri bodies. Negri bodies are seen in rabies, right? Negri bodies are seen in rabies. Just I'm asking you some important MCQs. What is the most common site for the Negri body? Can you tell me? Can you tell me in the comment box? Most common site for the Negri body? Most common site in the brain, hippocampus or cerebellum? It's a cerebellum. Remember, it's not hippocampus, it's a cerebellum. So remember this point. It's the most common site is the cerebellum. That was also NIMHANS and All India question in 2017. Cerebellum is the most common site for the Negri body in the human being. Pick body, where you will see pick body. Pick body is seen in Pick's disease, right? So or Pick's dementia. So this is also one of the tauopathy where Pick's dementia will be there, right? Lewy body, where you will see Lewy bodies are seen in Parkinson's disease, right? So these are the important point about other options in this question, right? So Lewy body is seen in Parkinson's disease, and Lewy bodies are made up of alpha synuclein protein. They are, remember, they are made up of alpha synuclein protein, which was the question in this AIMS exam also, right? Alpha synucleinopathy. So alpha synucleinopathy will be Parkinson disease. So Parkinson is example of alpha synucleinopathy, which is forming the Lewy bodies, right? So misfolded, remember this alpha synuclein will be misfolded, and they will be forming misfolded protein, which will be causing damage of the basal ganglia, and that is the reason for development of the Parkinson's disease, right? Now coming to the this question is very simple question if you ask me, and this is the future MCQ. Most common leukemia, Nishu, most common leukemia in Down syndrome. Okay, just let me finish off this thing. If examiner is asking most common leukemia in Down syndrome, remember your answer should be ALL. That's all. There should be no doubt about this. But when examiner says most common leukemia in Down syndrome less than 3-year old, remember then your answer should be acute myeloid leukemia M7, which is also known as acute megakaryocytic leukemia, right? So that is the question you had asked, and this is the answer, right? Yes. So now you can see this is the new question which examiner had asked in previous year AIMS exam. On that basis, I am asking you this question. TACO, transfusion associated cardiac overload, occurs within how many hours of the blood transfusion? This is the latest criteria of the 2018, right? And that examiner will be asking. Previously, it was 6 hour. Remember, previously TACO both were 6 hour, but now it has been changed. Yes, very good, Rajesh. Very good, very nice, Prashant. So this question is a little bit new type of MCQ. Definitely examiner is going to ask in future exam. TACO, right? So TACO is the you can see this is the cardiac overload. It's not like a trolley, right? So now I am very happy that majority of you have given the right answer. Even if you have not given right answer, don't worry and don't feel hurt about it. By every mistake, you will learn something. Remember this point. By every mistake, you will learn something, right? So don't worry anything, Mona, or whatever you are committing mistake here. I'm telling you, you are not going to commit mistake in exam, and that is the biggest win you are going to have, right? So now I am going to tell you here. Answer is 12 hours. So TACO is defined when it is occurring within 12 hours of the blood transfusion, right? TRALI, which was the question, transfusion associated acute lung injury. TRALI is happening within 6 hours, right? So TRALI is within 6 hours and TACO is within 12 hours, right? TRALI is the lung injury, TACO is the cardiac injury, right? So it's clear. Now I will just show you this table for comparison. This table, it will be with you after the class. What I want to emphasize important points here. Number one, as I have told you, trolley will be within 6 hours. TACO will be within 12 hours, which is not given in this table. I'm writing here, right? The important point which had been given in previous year AIMS exam was the blood pressure, then BNP level, and then edema fluid. Sorry, then response to the diuretics. So these are the three important things which you have to focus during exam time. Trali, can you see the lung injury? It is associated with lung injury, so obviously blood pressure will be normal. So I'm just writing normal. Don't think or don't read all these things. Blood pressure will be normal. Whereas TACO, you will be seeing increased blood pressure. So high blood pressure will be seen in the TACO. So just remember this one, which I'm increasing, right? So that is the one difference which examiner has given. Then second thing which examiner has given in previous year exam, also the temperature. Temperature will be increased in this case of the trolley. Whereas trolley, because see trolley, the reason for trolley is the cytokine, right? Reason for trolley is cytokine, and cytokine is the reason for fever, right? So now you understood what I want to say, that cytokine is the reason for the fever. TACO is the circulatory overload, not the cytokine, right? Not the cytokine. So that is why you will be seeing the normal temperature. So normal temperatures, BP will be normal, temperature is increased, trolley. BP is increased, temperature is normal, TACO. Then Another important thing is the B type natriuretic polypeptide, because B type natriuretic polypeptide, we all know that they're present in our atrium. So that is why B and P will be low in case of the TRALI, but high in case of the heart associated condition, right? Response to the diuretic, obviously, if there is a lung problem, they'll be not responsive to the diuretic or will be inconsistent. Whereas with diuretic, taco will be having improvement. So that is the another important, right? So most important thing for me according to exam point of view is the timing. When you are seeing timing is less than 12 hour, it is the taco. Less than 6 hour, TRALI, right? So these are important point you have to understand. Right. This is the again a very good question where you are seeing a 23-year-old female. Okay, I will just put up in this poll, right? So what is the right answer? Most likely method. See the peripheral smear and tell me what will be the most likely method for the diagnosis of this patient. This is a 23-year-old female, jaundice, anemia, peripheral blood smear is given. Most likely method used to diagnose this anemia. What should be the answer for this question? Yes, very good. Majority of you are going in the right direction only. Yes, can you see the picture? Whenever peripheral smear you are seeing, look for five areas. Observe the normal RBC. Normal RBC will be having central pallor. Remember? Yes, very good. Majority of you have given right answer again. So observe this thing, and you will see that majority, if you look at the examination of this patient, right, examination of this peripheral smear of this patient, first you have to look for the five areas, as I always say, 1, 2, 3, 4 and the 5. After looking for the five areas, then you have to locate the normal RBC. Can you see this is the normal RBC? Suppose I am showing you this is the normal RBC. Now you can see normal RBC is having central pallor. Now you compare all these RBC. Are you seeing any central pallor in this blue marked areas? No central pallor, and they are smaller also. So what are these blue cells? These are all spherocytes. These are all spherocytes, right? So what examiner is asking, if you are seeing abundant spherocytes, right? So now you can see that peripheral smear is full of spherocyte. So where you will see spherocyte, most commonly it is seen in autoimmune hemolytic anemia, and it can be seen in hereditary spherocytosis also, right? But that is why I have written here, most common cause of spherocytosis is the autoimmune hemolytic anemia, right? So how you will confirm the diagnosis of autoimmune hemolytic anemia? By using Coombs test, right? So answer is Coombs test, right? So now you can see answer will be Coombs test, right? So for this particular question, your answer should be Coombs test, right? So now what I want to say that look at the question again and read the line from the very first thing. 23-year-old female, right? So why I'm emphasizing on this point, just remember this extra point for your clinical point of view. When you are talking about autoimmune disorders, when you are talking about autoimmune disorders, commonly autoimmune disorders seen in females, and age group will be reproductive age group 20 to 50 years, right? So that is the very important thing for your whole life. You have to remember, when you are talking about autoimmunity, suspect the autoimmunity in female more commonly, number one. And in female also, the age group will be 20 to 50 years. Reproductive age group is more commonly affected by this autoimmunity, right? So that is the important point to understand here, right? And you can see now you understood this most common cause of spherocytosis. We are seeing so many spherocytes. So most common cause of spherocytosis will be the autoimmune hemolytic anemia. So autoimmune hemolytic anemia is antibody. So Coombs test is the one which will be detecting antibodies. So that is why you are using Coombs test, because you want to confirm the autoimmune hemolytic anemia. Ham's test is used for screening, not for the confirmation of the diagnosis. Ham's test is used for which anemia? Paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinuria. So for PNH, you will be using Ham's test. For PNH, you will be using Ham's test, right? And what about the hemoglobin electrophoresis? Is not confirmatory. It is used for the sickle cell anemia or hemoglobin disorders. And what about the sodium metabisulfite test? That is the question in exam. Sodium metabisulfite test. Sodium metabisulfite test is used for the screening of sickle cell anemia, right? So it is also used for the screening of sickle cell anemia. So remember, sickle cell anemia screening is done by sodium metabisulfite test, right? So now this question is also over. Remember this point, autoimmune disorder is common in reproductive age group female, most commonly affected. As you can see in the question itself, from the beginning itself, examiner is giving you the hint. This is again a very important and interesting question. A 9-year-old boy with facial lesion, as you can see that 9-year-old boy facial lesion is shown here, right? And examiner is asking, what is the most likely underlying abnormality in this condition? So can you tell me in this question, what is the most likely abnormality? Boy, facial lesion, cervical lymph node enlarged, and biopsy is very characteristic. Remember, I'm giving you hint. Biopsy is very characteristic. Yes, very good, Bipin. You are identifying the correct thing. Look at the baby. This boy is it's a pediatric patient, right? It's a pediatric patient, as you can see, 9-year-old boy. If you look at the look the ethnicity of the baby, this is looking African baby, right? So yes, very good, Pratik. It's looking African baby. So probably it is an endemic type of Burkitt lymphoma, right? So probably it is an endemic type of Burkitt lymphoma, which I'm showing you in this picture, right? So this picture is of endemic type of Burkitt lymphoma. See what I'm saying you here, Burkitt lymphoma can be endemic, can be sporadic, right? So these are the two main types, right? So this case is endemic type, which I'm showing you in this picture, because endemic type is endemic in African pediatric patient. Sporadic can occur anywhere, and usually they are adults, right? Endemic, most common site. See, these are the important MCQ. Can you see the lesion is here, and this is the most common site. Most common site is the face. And in face also, which bone will be most commonly affected? You can see in this mandible, right? So mandible is most commonly affected here in this case. So what I'm showing you here, it's a Burkitt lymphoma, right? Endemic and sporadic. Most common site face. And in this question, what examiner is saying that, there is a biopsy of the lymph node which is looking like this. Why biopsy of the lymph node is looking like this? Because in Burkitt lymphoma, you will see there is no anti-apoptotic gene. So remember, BCL2 is absent, right? BCL2 is absent, but BCL6 will be present. If you remember, yesterday I have told you BCL6 is a marker of germinal center. Marker of the germinal center from where Burkitt lymphoma arise, right? So BCL2 is absent, BCL6 is present, number one. Second thing, the tumor proliferation is very high. Tumor proliferation is very high in case of the Burkitt lymphoma, right? So because of this, when you are seeing a lymph node, so tumor cells are a small round blue cell tumor. Remember what we call them, a small round blue cell tumor, because they will be having only nuclei, and cytoplasm will be scanty. That is why it is called as a small round blue cell tumor. There are so many small round blue cell tumor, right? So small round blue cell tumor. Now come to the point. There is no BCL2, no anti-apoptotic gene. So because of lack of anti-apoptotic gene, what will happen? They will be undergoing necrosis. Sorry, they will be undergoing apoptosis. So now you can see these are apoptotic tumor debris. And who will clean this tumor debris? Macrophage. Now macrophage will come and they will clean this tumor debris, right? So what we are seeing, the small round blue cell tumor, what I'm showing you, small round blue cell tumor is like a sky, right? Sky is blue. So now you can see why I'm saying that it is like a sky. So background of a small round blue cell tumor, can you see this background of a small round cell tumor is called as sky, right? And macrophage, which is having tumor debris, it's called as a star. So that is why it is called as starry sky appearance. So macrophage is like a star, tumor cells are like a sky, and this appearance is called as starry sky appearance. So now you can see all these are tumor cells, a small round blue cell tumor, and these are, you can see in between, these are the foamy macrophages. You can see all these are foamy macrophages, right? So all these are foamy Macrophages. So this kind of presentation, can you see this? Now this question is a kind of clinical question. You can see the presentation of the patient, and then you can see the biopsy of this patient where we are seeing the starry sky appearance. And after that, examiner is asking which of the following is most likely underlying abnormality in this condition. So what you will see most likely in this, so answer is translocation involving c-myc gene. Many of the students, they have given this answer also, but remember, n-myc translocation is not seen here, right? N-myc translocation is not seen here. It is c-myc translocation, which is present on chromosome number 8, right? And that is why in this you will see translocation is between 8 to 14, right? This is the most common translocation in Burkitt lymphoma, right? Apart from this, you can see translocation from 8 to 2 and translocation from 8 to 22, right? So these are the various translocation you can see, and all of them is having chromosome number 8 involvement. So that is why sometimes we use mnemonic B looks like 8. So it is a Burkitt lymphoma will be having translocation 8. N-myc amplification, remember, Mohammad Jakir, N-myc amplification is seen in neuroblastoma, not the translocation, right? So that is very important thing. Wordings are very important. See the translocation, it is all translocation 8 to 14, 8 to 2, 8 to 22, right? So all these are translocation. N-myc amplification is associated with neuroblastoma. Remember, N-myc amplification, that is also important MCQ. N-myc amplification is associated with neuroblastoma. Neuroblastoma. And BCL2 overexpression, where you will see, can you tell me the answer for BCL1 overexpression? You remember BCL1 overexpression will be seen in mantle cell lymphoma. And BCL1 is also called as cyclin D1. BCL1 is also known as cyclin D1. So BCL1 or cyclin D1 overexpression is for mantle cell lymphoma. BCL2 overexpression, BCL2 is also called as cyclin D2. Cyclin D2, and this is seen in follicular cell or follicular lymphoma, right? So follicular lymphoma, you will be seeing this one. Now you understood that is the question which examiner asks very often in exam. Cyclin D2 or BCL2. Cyclin D2 or BCL2 follicular lymphoma. Cyclin D1 or BCL1 is for mantle lymphoma, right? So now answer is D. Now you understood. So all these things you have to understand, and you have to identify this starry sky appearance, right? Coming to this question, this is a very simple question in my opinion, but I know that it will be a hard question for you. But once I will explain you, I can tell you this is the very easy question, and you will be very happy for this kind of question. This is the kind of new thing which examiner is going to ask you. Can you identify this brain tumor? Can you identify this brain tumor? This is an easy question. That is why I did not give any history. This does not require any history. There are 3 histopathological images, and once you see, and yes, Arun, you are going very correct. Very nice, very good. That's awesome. That majority of you are coming to right answer only. That's the great effort. That's the great effort. Yes, very good. Deepu, you are telling the correct thing. That chicken wire capillaries. Wow, that chicken wire. Right. Many of you may be non-vegetarian and feeling happy for that thing. So that's great, right? So that's great effort, and that's good. So as you all have said, this is the oligodendroglioma. This is the oligodendroglioma. Yeah, Sanjay, you are having very sharp eyes. Where did you see the calcification? There is calcification. That's what I'm very happy. You can see Sanjay is telling there is a calcification. I will show you. Right. Let me explain you why it is oligodendroglioma. Why it is oligodendroglioma. Right. Oligodendroglioma, when you will see the histopathological examination, you will see characteristic tumor cell. This is the characteristic tumor cell. Can you see all these tumor cells are characteristic? What is characteristic? There is a cell, there is a nucleus, and around the nucleus there is a halo. So because of the perinuclear halo, remember what I'm showing you here, this is the perinuclear halo, and perinuclear halo is the reason for fried egg tumor cell. Fried egg tumor cell is seen in oligodendroglioma also. If you are seeing the brain tumor, And if it is a leukemia, hairy cell leukemia, you will be seeing fried egg tumor cell, right? So fried egg tumor cell is also seen in hairy cell leukemia, same presentation. So now you can see that they are full of similar cells which are having perinuclear halo, which is quite prominent in this picture. So fried egg tumor cell, number one characteristic or diagnostic finding in oligodendroglioma, because it's a brain tumor. So we are thinking in terms of the oligodendroglioma. Now look at this one, right? One fellow, I think somebody told me that there is a calcification. Yes, Dr. Sanjay has told me that there is a calcification. That's the absolutely fantabulous answer. You can see there is a basophilic structure. There is a basophilic structure like this, right? So there is a basophilic structure like this, which I am writing here. So this is called calcification. And remember, calcification is also one characteristic of the oligodendroglioma, right? So calcification is also one of the characteristic feature of the oligodendroglioma. So we are talking about oligodendroglioma. We are seeing number one, the calcification, as he has told. And now you can see there are so many capillaries. Can you see? These are the capillaries. Can you notice this? All these are blood capillaries, the blue color. All these are blood capillaries. You can see there is a lumen containing RBC, lumen containing RBC. So what we describe, can you see this? This is connected to this one, this is connected to this one. So what we describe, anastomosing capillaries, anastomosing capillaries within tumor mass. Remember, that is very important. Within tumor mass, they are having anastomosing capillaries, right? So this you call chicken wire capillaries, right? So for understanding, we are saying chicken wire capillaries, right? But for understanding, means for saying, you are saying chicken wire, but for understanding, you should know that there are small blood vessels which are communicating each other, and this is called as anastomosing capillaries, right? So anastomosing capillaries within tumor mass, calcification, fried egg tumor cells, and this one is the third characteristic property. What is this? Can you tell me, anybody, in comment box? I want to know that if you can identify. This is very particular and very important, quite boldly written in the Robbins also. What I am showing you here, can you see? There is a oligodendrocyte. I'll just make a diagram. This is the oligodendrocyte I'm making here. There is a oligodendrocyte like this, right? And you can see there are cells with perinuclear halo. And how is the cells? Tumor cells are surrounding them like a satellite. So what is this? This is the neuron. This is the neuron, and this is the tumor cells, right? So when neuron is covered by tumor cell, this is called as perineuronal satellitosis. Very good, very good, Supriya. So this is called as perineuronal satellitosis. Perineuronal satellitosis. So perineuronal satellitosis will be seen in oligodendroglioma, right? So that is why I wanted to tell that if you are finding these three things, right? So now you can see these are the three important findings of the oligodendroglioma. Number one, fried egg tumor cell. Number two is anastomosing capillaries and calcification. And number three is the perineuronal satellitosis, right? So examiner can ask you this question: which brain tumor will be having perineuronal satellitosis? Answer will be oligodendroglioma, right? Now look at this question. A 55-year-old female complaints of the flushing, GI pain, diarrhea, abdominal mass was resected, and microscopy, you can see gross microscopy, everything is shown here. So what will be the correct statement for this patient? Can you tell me the answer? What will be the correct statement for this tumor? Can you tell me what this tumor? I'm showing you electron microscopy, and then I'm showing you a light microscopy, and then there is a beautiful gross microscopy, and I will ask you, what is the feature you are seeing in the gross microscopy which is very striking? Yes, so that is a very good response by all of you. So I think you all have read very well about the carcinoid, right? So answer is A. So here I will just tell you, this is the picture. You can see 55-year-old female. Carcinoid is common in female. Age group is 40 to 60 years, right? And their presentation is facial flushing. So they will be having skin flushing. Mostly the face will be affected, and because and this is all GI pain, facial flushing, and diarrhea is because of the increased serotonin, right? Because of increase in serotonin, these symptoms you will be seeing: facial flushing, then gastrointestinal pain, and there is a diarrhea, right? So it is because of increased serotonin. So this increased serotonin, where you will see, you will find them into the serum or in the blood, right? So examiner is asking about this question. So here we can see there is a gross specimen microscopy and this one. So as I have told, this is the carcinoid. So I want to tell you what will be the right answer for this particular moment, right? The basic confusion is the mind, or in mind of the students, will be the 5-HIA, which was the question in the NEET PG 2017. So never get biased by seeing 5-HIA. That was the NEET question. Look at the language, what examiner is saying: increased 5-HIAA in blood in carcinoid. Remember, in carcinoid, 5-HIAA will be present in urine, not in the blood. Remember, so that is why this is not the right answer. 5-HIAA should not be into the blood. So that is why it is a false statement. It should be present in urine. So urinary HIAA will be increased in the carcinoid. What will be increased in the blood? Chromogranin and serotonin. So serotonin and chromogranin. Serotonin and chromogranin will be increased in the serum or in the blood, right? Vimentin is positive for the other tumors, not here. It will be present in the mesenchymal tumors like sarcomas, right? Desmin will be present in rhabdomyosarcoma, which is again not this case. Now come to the point. If you look at the see, because this history is very clear cut. So you said that it is a carcinoid, but I will tell you, as a pathologist, I'm telling you the mindset of the pathology examiner. When I am a pathologist as an examiner, what I will think: array, this gross is very simple. Why to give this history? I will just put the gross, microscopy, that's all, and I will ask this question. Because in this gross, what is the characteristic finding? You can see this is the mass, right? This mass, you are seeing the cut section. You can see the cut section of mass is brownish. Cut section of mass is brown due to which pigment? That was the Jipmer question, right? So that is the very important thing. Whenever you will see the carcinoid mass, and you will cut down, this will turn out to be brown because of the lipofuscin. Remember, this is because of the lipofuscin, they will be turning out to be brown, right? Lipofuscin is there, that is why they will be having brown color, right? So collar button and all is not useful here. Only in theoretically we are seeing collar button, but when we are seeing this special thing which will be attracting us is the brown color because of the lipofuscin pigment. Then we will take out the cut section. After cutting the section, what you are seeing, there are island of the tumor cells, right? And if you look at the individual tumor cells, what you will observe in the individual tumor cells, it will, remember, carcinoid is a neuroendocrine tumor, and in any neuroendocrine tumor you will see there is a salt pepper nuclear chromatin. There is a salt pepper nuclear chromatin. So you will find salt pepper nuclear chromatin, right? So salt pepper nuclear chromatin is, in simple word, you will see the fine stippling of the nuclear chromatin. Fine stippling of the nuclear chromatin you will see in the neuroendocrine tumor. So as you can see in this tumor also, if you look at closely, right, you will see there is a fine dot within the nuclei, and that is called as salt pepper nuclear chromatin. So when you see this kind of salt pepper nuclear chromatin, remember, if examiner uses the word salt pepper nuclear chromatin, think about neuroendocrine tumor. If examiner is showing a diagram where you can appreciate a very clear cut salt pepper nuclear chromatin, think about neuroendocrine tumor. So here it is the carcinoid, and in the cytoplasm you will be seeing a neurosecretory substances. Cytoplasm will be showing neurosecretory substances. Neurosecretory substances, right? And neurosecretory substances, what you will notice here, right? What you will notice here, you cannot see them in light microscopy. See, salt pepper you can see on light microscopy, but neurosecretory you can see only on electron microscopy, and they will be looking like a dense core granule like this, right? So they will be like a dense core granule. Dense core granule, that is also one important MCQ in exam. So dense core granule will be seen in neuroendocrine tumor, and what they will be containing, dense core granule will be containing the neuroendocrine marker like chromogranin. So In this question, you can see answer was chromogranin. Chromogranin will be there. Synaptophysin will be there. Right? Synaptophysin will be there. So all these things will be present inside this neurosecretory granules, right? So now you understood. So this is the classical picture where you are seeing brown color mass, then saltpeter nuclear chromatin, and on electron microscopy, you can see all these are dense core granules, right? Dense core granules which will be containing chromogranin or synaptophysin. So this will clinch the diagnosis of the carcinoid and diagnose, and now your answer will be chromogranin. So remember, chromogranin and serotonin will be present in the blood. HIAA is increased in urine. So that is the very important point. HIAA is increased in urine. That was the question also. So it is a carcinoid marker which will be present in urine. DD of the dense core granule can be seen in any neuroendocrine tumor. Nidhi, dense core granule will be seen in okay. It can be seen in any neuroendocrine tumor. It can be seen in neuroblastoma, pheochromocytoma, right? All these are neuroendocrine tumor. Pheochromocytoma, medullary carcinoma of the thyroid, medullary carcinoma of the thyroid. These are all India question only, right? And now I am showing you in this context carcinoid. Then you can see in the small cell cancer of lung, right? So all these are the dense core granule containing neuroendocrine tumor, right? So all these are dense core granule containing neuroendocrine tumors, right? Now come to this question. This is again a very sweet question, very easy question, right? Liver tumor biopsy is shown here, and examiner is asking which of the following is not correct about the. Remember, not correct about this tumor, not correct about this tumor. So just give a attempt for this question. Easy question only, right? This question is not tough. Liver tumor biopsy is shown below. Which of the following is not correct about this tumor? So what kind of liver tumor it is? By seeing this picture, if you look at the histopathology, this histopathology, you can see so many eosinophilic areas are there. These are probably the collagen bundle. These are the collagen bundle or fibrous tissue, right? Collagen bundle or fibrous tissue. That's great, right? So you all have given the right answer, and majority of you have given the right answer. That is very good thing. So in this, you can see, in this you can see, if you look at this biopsy, first I will show you this biopsy. What are these areas you have to identify? When you are seeing all these eosinophilic areas, you can see all these eosinophilic areas are the fibrotic area or fibrosis, or you can see, and this fibrosis is lamellar. So in lamella they are arranged. So lamellar fibrosis, that is why the name is fibrolamellar carcinoma. So what is this? Fibrolamellar carcinoma, and you can see these are all tumor mass. These are all tumor islands which we are seeing in the fibrotic island or collagen bundles, right? So we are seeing a tumor mass. These are the tumor mass or tumor island within the fibrotic band. So this is the characteristic of fibrolamellar hepatocellular carcinoma. Fibrolamellar hepatocellular carcinoma, usually they have good prognosis. Usually they have good prognosis, right? Now you look at this. What is the characteristic of this fibrolamellar hepatocellular carcinoma? This will be seen in both males and females. Number one, both males and females. And what will be the age group? They will be younger age group. So young male and female will be affected. And fibrolamellar carcinoma is not at all associated with the hepatitis and cirrhosis. Remember, that is the another important thing. So this is the answer. B is the answer. Hepatitis B virus is a risk factor. This is the false statement. So what I want to say that fibrolamellar hepatocellular carcinoma is not associated with, remember, it is not associated with hepatitis B infection or with cirrhosis. So that is why it is having good prognosis. If you see why I have written good prognosis, because they have no association with the hepatitis B or cirrhosis, right? Hepatic adenoma will be having association with the OCP. They can also have, but this is very less chances to have association. Hepatic adenoma will be there, that will be having more chances with the OCP use, right? So this is fibrolamellar, and they have better prognosis. That is the true statement. AFP level will be normal. That is also correct thing. So that is what we have to remember, that fibrolamellar carcinoma AFP is not a tumor marker, because alpha fetoprotein level will be normal. Usually, when you talk about the other hepatocellular carcinoma variant, you will be finding increase in alpha fetoprotein, right? Hepatocellular carcinoma, you will be seeing alpha fetoprotein. But this variant of hepatocellular carcinoma, alpha fetoprotein level will be normal, right? So in this, you will see hepatocellular carcinoma. In this, you will find neurotensin will be the marker. Neurotensin will be the marker, right? So neurotensin is the tumor marker. If examiner asking tumor marker for fibrolamellar carcinoma will be neurotensin, right? Now coming to the next question, this is the, I think, last question. We are going to see the renal mass was resected. Renal mass was resected, and you can see in this histopathology which is the true statement. Which is the true statement for this question? So it's a game of histopathological examination and identification. If you can identify, you can tell the right answer, because gene mutation you all might be knowing, right? But this is the just play of the histopathological examination. If you can identify, you can identify this one. See, tumor cells, renal mass was resected, and if you look at the tumor cell, they are growing beautifully along the fine thin strand, which is forming the, yes, very good, which is forming the papilla, right? So that is the again a very good response from you all. What I am showing you here, see what I was telling you, there is a thin strand. This is actually a small blood vessel. These are all blood vessels. This is the blood vessel, right? And then they are covered by fibrous tissue. So blood vessel is covered by fibrous tissue. This is one, this is second, and this is the third one. So like that, it is also showing. I'm just making it bigger, right? So what is this called as? This is called as fibrovascular core. This is called as fibrovascular core. Fibrovascular core is usually seen in true papilla. Remember, it is seen in true papilla, so that is why it is called as true papillary renal cell carcinoma. Remember, in pseudo papilla, there will be no blood vessel. Remember, that is the important point to understand. When you are seeing no blood vessel, this is called as pseudo papilla, which you see in the pancreatic cancer, pseudo papillary pancreatic cancer. So what I am showing you here, it is a true papillary RCC. So what is this? Because it's a renal biopsy. So this is a papillary renal cell carcinoma, right? Papillary renal cell carcinoma, where you are seeing fibrovascular core, and around the core tumor cells are there. So around the core tumor cells are there, and that is why you are seeing. So now you can see in this, where is the tumor core? I'm just making a green color, so you can see this is the tumor core, which is the fibrovascular. Now you are all these are fibrovascular tissue. All these are fibrovascular tissue, and remember, because of this vascularity, only, papillary renal cell carcinoma is most angio-invasive amongst all renal cell cancer. Most angio-invasive, right? So that is why it is also described as, it will start from the inferior vena cava and it will reach to the right atrium, right? So it will start from the renal vein, IVC, and then it will reach to the right atrium. So that kind of angio-invasiveness will be present in the papillary renal cell RCC. Clear cell, chromophobe, papillary, out of all these, maximum angio-invasiveness is present in the papillary renal cell cancer, right? So now you will be seeing that what will be the most common cytogenetic change in the papillary, means out of these things, where you will see VHL gene mutation. VHL gene mutation is seen in clear cell RCC. Again, a very important MCQ. Clear cell RCC will be having VHL gene mutation. Trisomy 7 and 17 is the right answer, which is seen in papillary renal cell carcinoma, right? So this is the papillary renal cell carcinoma, and in papillary renal cell carcinoma, trisomy 7 and 17 will be present. BHD gene mutation, bird hog dube syndrome, that is the full form of this BHD, right? Bird hog dube syndrome is associated with BHD gene mutation, right? So that is the full form, BHD. So they are having BHD gene mutation. These are autosomal dominant disorders. Autosomal dominant disorder, which is associated with bilateral. Which renal cell carcinoma is associated here? So remember, they are most commonly associated with chromophobe renal cell carcinoma. chromophobe renal cell carcinoma. So remember, BHT gene mutation is most commonly associated with chromophobe renal cell carcinoma, right? So that can be a future question because this name has been mentioned in the Robbins, Burt Hogg Dube syndrome, and they are most commonly associated with the renal cell, which renal cell carcinoma, chromophobe RCC, right? And chromosome 3-5 mutation is associated with clear cell type of RCC. Which RCC is having best prognosis? That was the question in All India exam. Which RCC? Now answer is B, trisomy 7 and 17. Now I'm asking about that. Which RCC is having best prognosis? RCC with best prognosis and RCC with worse prognosis. These are the two important MCQ. So best prognosis is the, very good, best prognosis is the chromophobe RCC. Best prognosis is the chromophobe renal cell carcinoma, and worst prognosis is the Bellini duct cancer. Worst prognosis is the Bellini duct cancers, right? So these are the important MCQs. So you have to remember, right? So I think till these are the questions which I have kept. Don't worry, as day will pass, I will be keeping more tougher question also. Some of the question I will be not giving any history also. So you have to read all these things, right? And I will be putting random questions. Someday I will be focusing at some topics. Someday I will be focusing at some topics. So you need not to worry about that thing. I will be bringing those topics which are important for exam. See, randomly, if you are going for all the topics and you are seeing all the unusual things, it will not help you in your exam. I'm telling you, because I'm teaching from past 12 years and I'm seeing that, right? Many questions come from my notes itself, right? So what I have seen, I'm not saying that notes what I'm giving, but I have sensed that examiner, they don't ask unusual question, they ask usual question. You focus on those things, don't run for the unusual thing. One or two unusual question will be there, we should not prepare on that basis, right? So that is very important thing. Most common cause of myocarditis, if you are asking viral myocarditis, remember, Pratik Kochar, it is the nowadays it is the HSV infection. Herpes simplex virus is more common than Coxsackie virus infection. So this is the latest update in the brown ward, most common cause of the viral myocarditis. Robbins, don't rely on the Robbins for all these database. Examiner is not going to ask the question from many. Robbins is based on the Western country. Remember, even when I was preparing, my senior used to say that if you have a clash between Robbins and Harrison, follow Harrison, and it's the same thing I will be telling you. Thank you so much for coming and interacting with us. And how to approach a peripheral smear slide. I have told you, Ajish Raj, when I was telling you here that hemolytic anemia. Don't worry, tomorrow again I will be coming with the peripheral smear. I will remember, Ajish, tomorrow I will come with the peripheral smear and I will tell you about particularly about that peripheral smear, how to approach. I will come with one anemia, right? So thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thanks to all of you. Sleep well and keep revising things, right? Good night.